Well, thank you. Yeah. Before we start the Sunday lesson, I wanted to thank all of you who turned out yesterday for our annual Vision and Action Planning Saturday. I spent about 3 hours yesterday just kind of going over what all of our various volunteer teams are doing and just setting what it is we want to accomplish this year. And also, I thought it was a good opportunity to mention to you, too, if you're looking for a way to get involved and belong. You know, we've got opportunities for once a month opportunities for you to serve. Someone who's be willing to staff the bookstore for about 30 minutes after closing. We're looking for a few more greeters. We've got our gardening team, which usually meets on a Saturday each month. We've got, in fact, if we could get a few more Reiki practitioners for our spiritual healing sessions. And then, of course, we get the Sunday snacks set up and clean up over there in Fellowship Hall after the service. Also looking for someone who'd be willing to help in the office on Mondays from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. So if you're interested in any of those, just contact me or contact Julie Baum, our Sacred Service Director. So just thought I'd pass that along to you, but we're in very good shape. So, good morning. There was a man driving along a country road in Iowa, and just a bit of a winding road, and had the windows open, beautiful day, and he's coming around, and there's a car coming in the other direction, and just as the cars got next to each other, the guy in the other car stuck his head out the window and said, "Pig!" And the guy's driving along and said, "Pig? What nerve? I mean, the guy's calling me a pig. I mean, he doesn't know me. Why would he say that?" And all of a sudden, the guy screeched on his brakes. And there was a huge pig in the middle of the road. The world, and of course the universe and God, have a way of coaching us and often keeping us safe from harm. And sometimes we misinterpret the guidance that we're getting. However, if we're willing to set the intention that, yes, this universe will coach me, and set the intention that I will be open and receptive to the coaching, it often goes considerably better. We are working our way through the book E Squared. I'm going to have Duncan put up a slide of the title, or the cover of the book, rather, there. E Squared was written by Pam Grout, and she actually goes to a Unity Center up there in Lawrence, Kansas, and she's a she's a well-published author and screenwriter, and she thought, well, how can I take these principles that we teach in Unity to a broader audience? So she came up with this idea of 9 experiments, to prove that spirituality, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, if you weren't here for the previous lessons, that's no problem. We've got all of them posted on our unitytampa.org website page at the bottom of the page. We've also, of course, since we stream live on Facebook, we've got that available on our Facebook page as well. And you can always request a CD or compact disc in the bookstore. How many of you are reading along with us at E Squared? Okay, yeah, it looks like about half of the group. Okay, great. But like I said, each one of these lessons stands on its own. So, she says her purpose in writing this book was fourfold. One is there's an invisible energy force or field of infinite possibilities, which she nicknames the FP, which, of course, in traditional Christianity, it's a sense of this is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit that's everywhere. Number 2, we impact this field and draw from it according to our beliefs and expectations. Number 3, our connection to the field provides accurate and unlimited guidance. And then number 4, the universe is limitless, abundant, and strangely accommodating. So this is experiment number 5 this week that we're working on, the Dear Abby experiment. Now, Dear Abby, of course, is an advice columnist. The column was actually established in 1956. But as you know, people write in, and the Dear Abby will give you an answer, at least advice, on how to handle your situation. Thing is, we always have divine guidance that's available to us. There are these things that in Unity we call divine ideas, that we can latch a hold of, the ones that are right and perfect for us to express. We just need to believe that divine ideas exist, and then open our mind and be willing to get the divine download and be willing to express them. So, we can indeed ask any question, to this divine presence that's around us, and we'll get an answer. I want to show you just a quick clip of a man who's asking the portrait of his late wife whether or not he should marry his new girlfriend.
Rebecca, if there's anything wrong with my feelings for Dolores, just give me a sign. Just any kind of sign. I'll keep on the lookout for it. Meanwhile, I'll just put you in the closet.
That's from the movie The Man with Two Brains. But it is interesting that sometimes we put out a question and we have a preference of what the answer is going to be. And we kind of ignore what's really there. And there have been so many times for us that it's kind of like, did we really listen to the answer? And are we willing to really embrace what it is that is ours to do, even if it seems nuts to everybody else? Albert Einstein said, "Man surrounded by facts, permitting himself no surprises, no intuitive flash, no great hypothesis, no risk, is locked in a cell. Nothing can seal the mind as securely as ignorance." Pam Groudon, in her book, writes, "The conscious mind was designed for just two things, to identify problems and to formulate goals. And once we have done that, we just need to step back. The problem is our conscious mind likes to sometimes figure out things or come up with our preferred outcome or our preferred path to that outcome." I'm going to have Duncan put up a slide. I've got a diagram here. Let's see if you recognize it. That is a diagram of you. Joseph Campbell, the late professor from Sarah Lawrence College, considered one of the world's authorities on mythology and religion, uses this diagram to talk about that brain consciousness and the other consciousness that's available to him. So he talked about how, if you consider that the circle is that sphere of energy that each of us is, like you, that everything above the line is what's conscious to us, and the square is that brain consciousness. But there's a center to the sphere from which divine guidance, energy, health, prosperity can come. And yet so often we think that this needs to be in charge, when in reality, this is much more rich, much more proper energy to follow along with. So have you ever had a feeling that you shouldn't do something, and then you went ahead and did it anyway? Over time, I've discovered in my life that, you learn the right way of doing things by doing them the wrong way. We learn when we really should follow our intuition by at least ignoring it at some point in our life early on. So, answers can also come through many avenues. It doesn't have to be a spinning portrait, or it doesn't have to be, even through our intuition. Sometimes the physical world provides the answer, because, of course, God works through all things and all people. So sometimes it can be, I'll put out a question, and sure enough, through some media, whether it's on the computer, TV, radio, there's the answer. And then, of course, coming through our dreams, as well as, like I say, our intuition, or that kind of loving inner voice that's within us. And Jesus, of course, taught this, divine guidance. In the Gospel of Matthew, 6th chapter, 6th verse, Jesus says, "But when you pray, go into your room inside you. Shut the door, pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. For your Father knows what you need even before you ask him." Well, what's the point in asking him then? The point is that we need to choose. We need to choose what it is, that we want to ask, or choose sometimes what it is that we need to do in a particular situation. And right after this verse that I just read to you, Jesus teaches them the Lord's Prayer. So when we go within, just ask God a question. What's the truth here? Show me the good in this situation. and allow that answer to come through whatever channel is necessary. In the book, Pam writes, that when did we get the crazy idea that God stops talking to people? And I know as we go through the history of Christianity, we discover that early on, of course, the Christians were persecuted, but then in the year 324, the Roman Emperor Constantine was able to consolidate his power there in the Mediterranean basin. And he decided to make Christianity the new state religion. But he couldn't help but notice that Christianity was being practiced differently down in the Egyptian place compared to like the Palestinian, compared to Europe. So he decided to get all of the bishops together for a summer conference, like about 4 months, called the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, and come up with just basically the guidelines that everybody has to follow. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't know, though, is that Constantine basically kind of rigged the system. He put in some things that he wanted to come out of that Council of Nicaea, and one of them was, look at how so many of the emperors have been bedeviled by people who come to them and say, I am a prophet of the Lord, and you are doing evil. He says, I don't want any more of that. So from this point forward, there will be no people coming forward saying that God spoke to them. And that's how it all started. So yeah, we're all connected to God. And if you're coming here to Unity Church, you probably are in touch with that. We're intuitive feelers in general when we look at the personality types who come to a Unity Church. So there are other ways of knowing, and sometimes, we can't really identify it, but yes, sure, we get that divine download. Mozart, when he was asked, how do you get these ideas for your compositions? He said, I do not know, and I have nothing to do with it. A more modern, the novelist Larry McMurtry, wrote Lonesome Dove and all of these various westerns, as well as some other contemporary stuff. He says, how do you get the ideas for your stories? He says, it's weird. I feel as if these stories are facts to me across the void. And I had the same experience when Carla and I were in seminary. Back then, it was a 2-year program. You went 8 quarters straight through. And of course, there's this process. You start in July and you end the year in June. You have to apply to the seminary. So usually you have to get your applications in by, I think it was September 1st. Then they would let you know if you were invited in for oral interviews, in January. And then by March, they would notify you as to whether you're accepted, and that way you had 3 months to get to Unity Village and get situated to go through the seminary. But when the students would come in January, there was this tradition that the class ahead of them would put together just kind of a show for them. And the show was meant to kind of help them. And so we organized, into teams as to, okay, how are we going to do this? We came up with this idea. Okay, the show is going to be this couple watching ministerial school TV. And so we're trying to come up with ideas for sketches and commercials and all of that. And at one point, it's like, okay, we want to make sure that we've got, this one sketch that describes what it is like going through the interviews and how you need to get yourself centered. And it was weird. We got together and we were kind of brainstorming, and nothing seemed to be working. So it was just nothing. And each of us were assigned, 1 or 2 of the students who were coming in for interviews to talk to. And so I had a conversation. Carla and I, there was a couple that had applied, so Carla and I got the couple, and we were talking to them on the phone and just kind of getting a sense of their anxieties and all of this stuff, And so, Carla and I that night went to bed, and all of a sudden it just came in a flash to me, like a lightning bolt, like a zip file. It was all there. I had the sketch in mind. And it turned out I wrote Mr. Fillmore's neighborhood based on Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And Mr. Rogers would, we'd meet people along the path, and each person would have a nugget of advice or wisdom for the students, So, and one of them was, the woman was holding a box, and the young lady who was walking with Mr. Fillmore said, oh, what's that? And she says, it's a BS detector. All of the people who will be interviewing you tomorrow have a BS detector. And the little girl asked, "What does BS stand for?" And he said, "Snow job." So sometimes, you get that bolt of inspiration. And each of us have special gifts, passions, and talents that we have that we do better than other people in the world. So maybe you're not a writer. That's okay. But maybe you cook really well, or maybe you parent very well, or maybe you teach very well. These are all things, and you know it. You have had it happen to you already, where you just kind of get that zzz. It's like, oh yeah, there it is. There's a divine idea, and I can work with this. So the experiment this week, as I mentioned, is the Dear Abby experiment. And Duncan, if you put up that slide for us. So the exercise or the experiment this week is to choose an issue that's troubling you. Maybe something's confusing you or occupying your thoughts, and you just haven't come to a decision on it yet. And then just kind of ask for guidance. If you can boil it down to a yes-no question, even better. That way you improve your odds to 50-50, right? but just kind of put it out there and really just kind of take a moment to speak to Spirit, speak to God as you know God to be. And then ask for a clear, indisputable answer, like a spinning portrait or something like that. And just, and then, set a 48-hour deadline and know that it will come to you. So that's the exercise for this week. Now, in 1989, there was a movie that was released called Field of Dreams. It was about a story of an Iowa farmer who started getting this intuitive sense, and he'd hear a voice, which, of course, became part of our vernacular. If you build it, he will come. Well, our closing video is from another Iowa farmer who lives about 100 miles northwest of where that first movie was filmed, and he, too, came up with an idea.